Once a peaceful country caught between East and West, now a battleground for one of the most consequential wars of our time. But is this just a story of territorial expansion, NATO alliances, and political ideologies? Or is there something deeper? Something Vladimir Putin found in Ukraine that he couldn't walk away from. When Russia launched its special military operation, the narrative was simple. NATO's eastward expansion had crossed the line. Putin warned repeatedly that Ukraine joining NATO was a red line, but was that the only reason? After all, diplomacy could have achieved the same result. What if Ukraine had simply agreed not to join NATO? Would this war have been avoided? Or was the stage already set for something much bigger? Let's start with what's beneath Ukraine's soil. Did you know that Ukraine sits on vast reserves of rare earth metals? Lithium, titanium, and uranium. These are the building blocks of the modern world, from electric vehicles to advanced weaponry. In fact, some reports suggest that Ukraine holds some of the largest untapped lithium reserves in Europe. Now ask yourself, in an era of technological supremacy, would any superpower ignore such a treasure trove? But it's not just minerals. Ukraine is often called the breadbasket of Europe. Its fertile lands feed millions, and its agricultural exports dominate global markets. Control over Ukraine means control over critical food supplies. For a country like Russia, whose geopolitical influence often revolves around energy and resources, could this have been an irresistible prize? Then there's the strategic position. Ukraine is a buffer state between Russia and NATO. For years, Moscow has watched NATO creep closer to its borders, absorbing former Soviet republics like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Ukraine was the final frontier, a symbolic and strategic loss Putin couldn't tolerate. But let's flip the script for a moment. What if Ukraine had declared neutrality? What if Zelensky had announced that NATO membership was off the table? Would there have been peace? Or was this war inevitable regardless of diplomacy? And what about the West? From sanctions to military aid, the West has thrown billions into this conflict. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sanctions haven't broken Russia. In fact, Moscow's economy has proven far more resilient than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Europe faces an energy crisis, relying on expensive alternatives while Russia strengthens its ties with India and China. So who's really winning here? The West may posture, but Russia has been playing a long game, quietly forging alliances and reshaping global trade routes. And Ukraine, it's become a pawn in a much larger chess game. But let's get back to Ukraine. Did you know there are mysterious biolabs in the country, some funded by foreign powers? Officially, they're for research. But unofficially, theories abound. Could there be something in those labs, or perhaps elsewhere in Ukraine, that Russia couldn't afford to leave in Western hands? And then there's the global dimension. While the West focuses on sanctions and military aid, countries like India are walking their own path, buying Russian oil, negotiating peace, and playing mediator. Meanwhile, China stays opportunistic, watching closely but never fully committing to one side. This war isn't just about Ukraine, it's about the world's future balance of power. And in this complex web, Russia seems to be securing its position as a dominant player while others falter. So why Ukraine? Was it just about NATO, or the minerals, or the agriculture? Or is there something else hidden from the public eye? Something so vital that Putin deemed it worth the risk of global condemnation and war? History will remember this war, but the truth behind it may take decades to uncover. For now, we're left with questions. What did Putin see in Ukraine that we haven't? And how far will the world go to either stop him or support him? One thing is clear, this is more than a war. It's a turning point in global history.